When will you get a real job instead of sitting at home pretending to work on your little computer? My father-in-law Richard's voice boomed across the Thanksgiving table, his face red from his third glass of wine. I glanced at my phone where a notification showed his pension fund had just cleared another 3.2% gain that morning, roughly $47,000 in value added to his retirement while he'd been sleeping. How would he react if he knew his unemployed son-in-law managed the algorithm that controlled whether he'd be eating cat food or caviar in retirement? The dining room in my in-laws' Westchester home was everything you'd expect from new money trying to look like old money: heavy mahogany furniture, crystal chandelier, and artwork chosen by an interior designer to convey wealth rather than taste. Richard sat at the head of the table like a king surveying his domain, while his wife Catherine nodded along with his every pronouncement. My wife Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, her silent apology for what was becoming a holiday tradition. Day trading isn't a career, Marcus, Catherine added, her voice dripping with the kind of concern that masked contempt. It's gambling. Sarah deserves a husband who contributes to their future, not one who plays with internet money while she works herself to death at the hospital. I took a careful sip of water, watching the ice cubes shift in the crystal glass. 3 years of this. 3 years of explaining that algorithmic trading wasn't gambling, that managing investment portfolios through quantitative analysis was as far from playing as neurosurgery was from playing operation. 3 years of them refusing to understand that their daughter had married someone who made more in a month than Richard had made in his best year as a mid-level insurance executive. You're absolutely right, I said finally, setting down my glass. I should reconsider my client list. Sarah's hand tightened on mine. She knew that tone, the carefully neutral voice I used when making calculations that would change everything. Finally, some sense, Richard bellowed, raising his wine glass. I told Catherine you'd come around eventually. My buddy at Merrill Lynch is hiring. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work with a steady paycheck. Benefits. Respectability. Entry-level financial advisor, Catherine added helpfully. $45,000 to start, but with your background in computers, maybe they'd go up to $50,000. I'd made that before lunch on Tuesday shorting Tesla volatility. But they didn't know that. They didn't know anything, really, except that their daughter had married a man who worked from home in sweatpants and somehow paid for a Manhattan apartment that cost more per month than most people made in a quarter. Tell me about your retirement planning, I said, changing the subject with the smooth redirection of someone who'd learned to manage these conversations like positions in a portfolio. Still with Fortress Financial? Best in the business, Richard puffed up. Tom Morrison's been managing our money for 20 years. Solid returns. Conservative growth. The way retirement should be handled, by professionals in actual offices, not bedroom cowboys clicking buttons. Tom Morrison. I knew him by reputation, a dinosaur who still believed in 60-40 portfolios and charged 1.5% management fees for the privilege of underperforming index funds. But his clients loved him because he wore suits and had an office with leather chairs and could talk for hours about municipal bonds over expensive lunches. Which fund are you in? I asked. Fortress Balanced Growth. Tom's flagship. We've got about $1.4 million in there. Should be enough for a comfortable retirement if the market holds. I pulled out my phone, ostensibly checking something innocuous. But I was looking at their fund on my secondary screen, FBG, one of 12 institutional funds I provided algorithmic management for through a white label arrangement. Fortress Financial thought they were buying proprietary AI-driven portfolio optimization. What they were actually buying was my algorithm, refined over 8 years and managing just north of $3 billion in assets. Fortress Balanced Growth, I repeated. That's the one with the new algorithmic overlay, right? The AI-driven rebalancing system they implemented last year. Richard nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Tom says it's revolutionary. Some hotshot quant developed it, probably one of those MIT kids who actually understands real finance. Not like these retail day traders who think they can beat the market with Robinhood and YouTube videos. Sarah made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cough. She'd been there the night I'd signed the Fortress contract, had opened champagne when they'd agreed to my terms. She knew exactly which hotshot quant had built their revolutionary system. It's performed well, I said mildly. Up 34% year-to-date, I believe. 34.7, Richard corrected proudly. Best performing fund in their entire portfolio. Tom says the algorithm is so sophisticated it can predict market movements 3 days out. Makes thousands of micro-adjustments daily. Real professional stuff. Fascinating, I said. And you trust this algorithm with your entire retirement? Why wouldn't I? It's not some amateur operation. This is institutional-grade technology. The kind of thing that requires real infrastructure, real expertise. Not someone's gaming computer in their spare bedroom. I glanced around the dining room. Besides Sarah and myself, Richard's brother James was there with his wife Patricia. James ran a small accounting firm and had, on my quiet recommendation to Sarah, moved his clients' money into several funds I managed. He caught my eye and quickly looked away. Then there was Catherine's sister Dorothy, whose nonprofit I'd helped set up an endowment for. Though she thought the anonymous donation had come from a traditional finance firm, they all benefited from my work. They just didn't know it. Marcus was actually published in the Journal of Quantitative Finance, Sarah said, unable to keep the pride out of her voice despite our agreement to keep my success low-key around her parents. His paper on adaptive algorithms in volatile markets. Anyone can write papers, Catherine interrupted. Richard's friend Tom has real experience. 30 years in the industry. That's what matters. Not theories and equations, but actual experience managing actual money for actual people. You're absolutely right, I said. Experience matters. Knowing your clients matters. Understanding their needs, their risk tolerance, their goals. Making sure their money is in good hands. Exactly. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Which is why you need to get a real job. Learn from professionals. Stop this day trading nonsense before you lose everything and drag our daughter down with you. My phone buzzed. A notification from my monitoring system. The Tokyo markets were about to open, and the Nikkei futures suggested volatility. In about 6 hours, my algorithms would start making adjustments across all the portfolios I managed, including Richard's precious Fortress Balanced Growth Fund. You know what? You've convinced me, I said. I'm going to make some changes. Starting with my client list. Finally. Catherine clasped her hands together. Sarah, your husband is finally seeing sense. Sarah looked at me with a mixture of concern and curiosity. She knew that tone, that careful phrasing. I only sounded this agreeable when I was about to do something that would fundamentally alter the playing field. I've been thinking about it for a while, I continued. Managing other people's money is a huge responsibility. You have to ask yourself, am I adding value? Am I worth the trust they're placing in me? Or am I just, what did you call it? Playing with internet money? Exactly, Richard nodded vigorously. That's very mature of you to recognize. So effective immediately, I'm going to stop managing any funds for people who don't respect what I do. It's not fair to them or to me to continue a relationship built on such fundamental misunderstanding. The table went quiet. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. What exactly are you saying? Sarah asked, though I suspected she already knew. I'm saying that I'm going to notify Fortress Financial that I'm terminating our contract for algorithmic management of their funds. Effective at market close on Monday. They'll need to find another hotshot quant to handle their portfolio optimization. But that's... James started, then stopped himself. That's what? I asked innocently. Nothing. Just... Fortress is doing really well. Seems odd to change strategies now. Richard laughed. What would you know about Fortress's strategies? This is exactly what I'm talking about, amateur hour. You think you understand institutional finance because you read some websites? Marcus here thinks he can affect major funds with his laptop. It's delusional. You're right, I said. What would I know? I'm just a bedroom cowboy clicking buttons. Fortress will be fine without whatever small contribution I might have made. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my business partner, Tokyo opening volatile. Want me to handle the overnight session? I typed back, no. I've got it. But flag all Fortress positions for manual review Monday. We're exiting. Everything okay? Sarah asked. Perfect, I said. Just making sure I'm ready to be unemployed. Can't manage institutional portfolios from the unemployment office, right? Now you're being dramatic, Catherine said. No one said unemployed. Entry-level positions are perfectly respectable. Everyone has to start somewhere. Even at 32? Better late than never, Richard said magnanimously. I'll call Tom Morrison Monday. Let him know you're ready to join the real world. He might have some junior analyst positions available. Data entry, probably, but it's a foot in the door. Data entry. For Tom Morrison. Who paid 7 figures annually to license my algorithms while having no idea who I was. The same Tom Morrison who'd called me a genius in his last investor newsletter, praising the mysterious quant who'd transformed Fortress's performance. That's very generous, I said. I'll think about it. The rest of dinner proceeded with Richard and Catherine outlining my new career path. I'd start at the bottom, naturally. Learn the business from real professionals. Maybe in 10 years, if I worked hard and showed aptitude, I could manage small accounts. Nothing major, the algorithm-driven funds required special expertise, but perhaps some basic retirement accounts for middle-income clients. The important thing, Richard concluded as dessert was served, is that you'll be contributing. Really contributing. Not sitting at home in your pajamas pretending to be Gordon Gekko. I never wear pajamas when I trade, I said. Bad for discipline. See? That's exactly the kind of amateur thinking that. His phone rang. Tom Morrison's name appeared on the screen. Speak of the devil, Richard said, answering cheerfully. Tom, we were just talking about you. Having Thanksgiving with the family. What? Slow down. What do you mean, emergency? The room went quiet. Richard's face cycled through confusion, concern, and then something approaching panic. That's impossible, he said. The fund was up 34% this year. What do you mean the algorithm manager terminated the contract? Can't you just? Of course I understand it's proprietary, but surely. Monday? This Monday? But what about our positions? He listened for another minute, his face growing paler. Manual management? Back to traditional? But Tom, you said the algorithm was the future of. I see. Yes. Yes, I understand. We'll discuss it Monday. He hung up slowly, staring at the phone like it had betrayed him. What happened? Catherine asked. The quant. The one who built Fortress's algorithm. He's pulling out. Terminating the contract. Tom says they'll have to revert to traditional management strategies. So? Catherine said. Tom's been managing money for 30 years. He doesn't need some computer program. The algorithm was responsible for 90% of this year's gains, Richard said quietly. Without it, Tom expects we'll need to readjust expectations. Significantly. How significantly? James asked, though his face suggested he already knew. Back to historical norms. 6 to 8% annually. Maybe. But that means. Catherine started calculating. Our retirement timeline will need to be adjusted. Tom recommends we consider working another 5 to 7 years to compensate. The table fell silent. 5 to 7 years. Richard was 62, planning to retire at 65. Now he'd be working into his 70s. These quants, he spat finally. No loyalty. No professionalism. Probably got a better offer from some hedge fund and left Tom high and dry. This is what happens when you trust technology over experience. Probably, I agreed. Very unprofessional. Sarah kicked me under the table. Still, I continued, I'm sure Tom will figure something out. Real professionals always do. And hey, if you need to adjust your retirement timeline, at least you'll have the comfort of knowing your money is being managed by someone in an actual office. This isn't funny, Catherine snapped. I'm not laughing, I said. I'm genuinely sorry this happened. Market dynamics can be cruel. Algorithms especially, they don't care about relationships or loyalty or how long someone's been in the business. They just care about performance. Which is why they can't be trusted, Richard said. Tom will rebuild. He'll find another quant, a better one. More professional. More committed. I'm sure he will, I said. Though good quants are hard to find. The best ones tend to be particular about their clients. My phone buzzed. Another text from my partner, Fortress positions flagged. You sure about this? That's 400 MAUM walking away. I typed, dead sure. Start unwinding Monday. Gradual exit, no market disruption. What are you doing? Sarah asked quietly. Reconsidering my client list, I said. Like your parents suggested. Marcus, she said warningly. What? They're right. I should be more selective about who I work with. More professional. Maybe even require clients to understand and respect what I do before I agree to manage their money. This is revenge, she whispered. This is business, I corrected. Your father just spent 20 minutes explaining why what I do isn't real work. Why would I continue providing fake work to his very real retirement fund? Because you're not petty. I'm not petty. I'm professional. So professional, in fact, that I only work with clients who value my expertise. It's called having standards. Across the table, Richard was still on his phone, frantically texting with Tom Morrison. Catherine was recalculating their retirement budget on her phone. The comfortable future they'd planned, the Florida condo, the European river cruises, the generous gifts to grandchildren, all of it suddenly uncertain. You could tell them, Sarah said. Right now. Explain everything. Explain what? That their unemployed son-in-law, the one who needs to get a real job, has been the architect of their retirement gains? That the bedroom cowboy they've mocked for 3 years is the reason they could afford this house? That every dismissive comment, every condescending lecture about real work, was directed at the person whose algorithm they trusted with their entire future? Yes, she said simply. I considered it. It would be satisfying, in a way, to see their faces when they realized the truth. To watch them recalibrate 3 years of assumptions in real time, but satisfaction wasn't the point. The point was simpler: respect. No, I said finally. Because even if I told them, they wouldn't really believe it. They'd find a way to minimize it, to explain it away. I'd become the exception that proved their rule, the one-day trader who got lucky, who stumbled into success despite doing everything wrong. So instead you'll let them suffer? I'll let them experience the consequences of their choices. They chose to put their trust in Tom Morrison and traditional finance. They chose to dismiss algorithmic trading as gambling. They chose to spend 3 years telling me to get a real job. Now they get to live with those choices. That's cold. That's fair. The rest of the evening wound down in subdued conversation. Richard and Catherine were clearly shaken, trying to process how their carefully planned future had shifted in a single phone call. James kept shooting me knowing looks, clearly understanding more than he was willing to say. Dorothy discussed her nonprofit's upcoming gala, carefully not mentioning the anonymous donation that had made it possible. As we prepared to leave, Richard pulled me aside. "Marcus," he said. "About that job at Merrill Lynch. I know I've been hard on you. But with Sarah working so much, and now with our situation changing, maybe it's time to swallow your pride. 50,000 isn't much, but it's stable. Reliable." I looked at him, really looked at him. 3 years of dismissive comments, of superiority, of treating me like a failure. And now, faced with his own financial uncertainty, he was trying to help. In his way. According to his values. "I appreciate that, Richard," I said. "I really do. But I think I'm going to stick with what I'm doing." His face hardened. "Pride goeth before the fall, Marcus." "Sometimes," I agreed. "And sometimes pride is just knowing your worth." We left them there, in their Westchester house with its heavy furniture and careful artwork, facing a future that had suddenly become less certain. By Monday, Fortress Financial would announce the departure of their star algorithm. By Tuesday, Richard's fund would begin its slow slide back to mediocrity. By Wednesday, he'd probably call Tom Morrison again, begging for reassurance that everything would be fine, and somewhere in Manhattan, in my home office that Richard dismissed as unprofessional, I'd continue doing what I did. Managing billions in assets for clients who understood that real work didn't always happen in offices. That expertise didn't always wear a suit, that the future of finance lived in algorithms and code. Not leather chairs and expensive lunches. The irony, of course, was perfect. Richard trusted his retirement to an algorithm while dismissing algorithmic trading as fake work. He praised institutional expertise while mocking the expert who made it possible. He demanded I get a real job while depending on my very real skills for his very real retirement. But irony, like algorithms, doesn't care about human ego. It just processes the data and delivers the results, and the result was simple: respect is a two-way street. Those who can't offer it shouldn't expect to receive its benefits, even if they never know what they lost.